To a reminder of our top story, a court in Sierra Leone has granted the country's former president, Ernest Bai Koroma, permission to travel abroad on medical grounds despite facing treason charges. A court order seen by the BBC shows that Mr. Koroma is allowed to travel to Nigeria for more than 3 months and that he must appear before a magistrate court on the 6th of March. And that's where we conclude the bulletin for today. Thanks for tuning in. See you tomorrow. Goodbye.
Live from London, this is BBC News. After hitting targets in Iraq and Syria this week, Iran admits carrying out an airstrike on neighbouring Pakistan. Residents of Khan Yunis in Gaza describe one of the most intense nights of airstrikes since the start of Israel's offensive. The Princess of Wales is recovering following abdominal surgery. Kensington Palace says the operation was a success and she'll remain in hospital for up to a fortnight. Meanwhile, Buckingham Palace has announced King Charles will visit hospital next week to be treated for an enlarged prostate. His condition is believed to be benign and not serious. Hello, I'm Anna Foster. Welcome to the Daily Global, where we'll bring you the top stories from around the world over the next 2 hours. We'll start in Pakistan, which has recalled its ambassador to Iran in response to a missile and drone attack on its territory. Tehran's envoy has also been blocked from returning to Islamabad. Iranian state media say the strike targeted a militant group in the sparsely populated province of Baluchistan, but the Pakistani Foreign Ministry said that 2 children were killed in the attack. A spokesperson called it a blatant breach of Pakistan's sovereignty and accused Iran of violating international law. Well, our correspondent Caroline Davis is following developments from Islamabad. Dr. Khaled Dawas, it's important work and thank you so much for coming in to tell us about it. And you saw as well those pictures of Dr. Dawas at work there with his colleagues from University College Hospital in Gaza as well. Around the world and across the UK, this is BBC News. Let's look at some other stories that are making the news. A court in Kenya has ruled that the leader of a doomsday cult linked to the deaths of hundreds of people should undergo a mental health assessment ahead of a murder trial. Paul Mackenzie Nhenje was arrested in April after the police began finding bodies in shallow graves. Russian police have clashed with protesters angered by the jailing of a rights activist in the Republic of Balakortsan. Fail Alsanov has been sentenced to 4 years in a penal colony after a court found him guilty of inciting ethnic hatred. He was accused of insulting migrants at a protest against plans to mine for gold. And a US-bound ANA plane was forced to return to Tokyo after an intoxicated passenger bit a crew member mid-flight. The passenger, who was reportedly a 55-year-old American, sunk his teeth into a crew member's arm while heavily drunk, leaving her mildly injured. Japanese media said the man told police he'd taken a sleeping pill and did not remember what had happened. You're live with BBC News. Now, China's population has fallen for the second year in a row. Official figures show that China's population was at 1.409 billion in 2023. That is a drop of 2.7 million against last year, more than double the decline in 2022. New births fell 5.7% to 9 million, and the birth rate was the lowest ever recorded. And total deaths rose 6.6% to 11.1 million, the highest rate of deaths since the tumultuous days of the 1974 Cultural Revolution. While many of the deaths are linked to the COVID pandemic, the trend towards an increasingly ageing population is of concern to the Chinese government, which needs people of working age to drive the economy and pay taxes. In 2021, you might remember, it allowed couples to have up to 3 children after decades of the one-child policy in China. Daniela Ralph, our royal correspondent, thank you for joining us from our newsroom. Stay with us here on BBC News. This is BBC News, the headlines. After hitting targets in Iraq and Syria this week, Iran admits carrying out an airstrike on neighbouring Pakistan. Meanwhile, Qatar sends medicine for hostages held in Gaza in a deal brokered with Israel and Hamas to see increased aid enter Gaza for civilians. And Rishi Sunak faces a crucial vote on his plan to deport asylum seekers to Rwanda after 2 deputy chairmen from his own party resigned over the issue. Well, let's return to our top story. And Iran has admitted to carrying out a missile and drone attack on Pakistani territory. Speaking at the World Economic Forum, Tehran's foreign minister insisted that Tuesday's strike targeted a militant group, Jaish al-Adl, and described Pakistan as a friendly country. Take a listen. Sarah Rainsford there behind the scenes, as you could see from Polish public television. You're watching BBC News.
Hello and welcome to Focus on Africa, the place where real-time, in-depth and relatable stories matter. With me, Wahiga Mwaura, coming to you from Nairobi, where we unfold your discussions.
I always want to keep it original by being me.
News.
Macron announced that the French forces will leave by the end of the year.
And conversations.
It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen in my life.
That bring you to the heart of the continent. Focus on Africa from BBC News.
A large number of Conservative MPs, 60 yesterday, backing amendments, trying to get it changed, going against the government's will. They didn't succeed. Some of them are still trying to do that right now. And then we will get to that final stage. It's called the third reading. The government pretty confident that a lot of those rebels will now swing behind the bill because really, if they don't, then it kills the thing altogether. Let's speak to Robin Miller, who is a Conservative MP and who yesterday, now you were one of the rebels yesterday, and you didn't succeed, but there were a lot of you who were unhappy about it. Just tell me broadly why you're unhappy with the detail of this bill, because you agree with the principle.
I do, absolutely, and it's an important point to make.
Vicky, thank you. Vicky Young there, our Deputy Political Editor. We'll keep in touch over the next couple of hours as those amendments go through. You can see there it's always notable when that bell rings, as Vicky was describing, the division bell rings and the Commons chamber starts to empty out. You can see the full stretch of those green benches, and MPs go off through the separate lobbies to cast their votes and come back in there. You'll see it start to fill up again. Now, as those amendments happen and as the vote happens as well, of course, we'll keep you right up to date with it here on BBC News. You can follow as well on the BBC News website developments on our live page too. Stay with us here on BBC News. Live from London, this is BBC News. The UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak faces a crucial test on his plan to deport asylum seekers to Rwanda. This is the scene live in the House of Commons, where MPs are voting on a series of amendments to the Rwanda Bill ahead of the main vote in a few hours' time. After hitting targets in Iraq and Syria this week, Iran admits carrying out an airstrike on neighbouring Pakistan. Residents of Khan Yunis in Gaza describe one of the most intense nights of airstrikes since the start of Israel's offensive. The King reveals he's being treated for an enlarged prostate just after news that the Princess of Wales has had abdominal surgery. Hello, I'm Anna Foster. Welcome to the Daily Global, where we bring you the top stories from around the world. We begin in Westminster, where votes of MPs are just getting underway on a series of fresh amendments to the Prime Minister's plans to send migrants to Rwanda. Rishi Sunak is trying to revive government proposals to send some asylum seekers to the East African country, arguing that it will deter people from crossing the channel in small boats. but he suffered the biggest rebellion of his premiership in Parliament on Tuesday night, with 60 of his Conservative MPs voting in favour of earlier amendments to the bill. 2 of the party's deputy chairmen resigned, saying the legislation wasn't tough enough. Well, this is the scene live in the House of Commons now. There are going to be votes on up to 11 amendments. First of all, they'll be taking place over the next few hours. You'll be able to watch. You can see on your screen now those live pictures, and you'll also be able to see as well the results of those different amendments as they come through. They'll be there on your screen. You'll see the results and the numbers, of course, as we build to that main vote, the culmination of all of this after those 11 amendments go through. So you won't miss a thing here on BBC News. First of all, here's our political editor, Chris Mason. Around the world and across the UK, this is BBC News. Let's look at some other stories then making news here in the UK. Politicians in Northern Ireland have once again failed to elect a Stormont Speaker. It's the 7th recall of the Assembly since May 2022. The Assembly collapsed almost 2 years ago now due to the Democratic Unionist Party's opposition to post-Brexit trade rules for Northern Ireland. A legal deadline to restore devolved government runs out on Thursday. The final report of the public inquiry into the affected blood scandal will be published in late May. The chair of the inquiry, Sir Brian Langstaff, said more time was needed to prepare a report of this gravity. Victims and their families were initially told that they would learn the findings in autumn last year. The rate of inflation unexpectedly rose to 4% in December, the first increase in 10 months, up from 3.9% in November. The Office for National Statistics says tobacco and alcohol had the biggest impact on prices. The Chancellor insists the government's plan to bring down inflation is working. You're live with BBC News. You can watch on your screen as well. We're showing you here live pictures of the House of Commons, where the UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is facing a challenge to the government's plan to send some asylum seekers to have their claims processed in Rwanda. At the moment, the Commons are voting on a series of amendments. You can follow there the live pictures and the results of those amendments on your screen as well. Now, you can see on the side of your screen there, let me show you those live pictures from the House of Commons, where the result is coming in from one of those amendments that are happening ahead of the main vote tonight on one of the Conservative Party's really key promises, especially in a general election year. This is the controversial bill to try and send some asylum seekers to Rwanda to have their claims processed. What you're seeing at the moment, these live pictures of the Commons, is a series of amendments to the bill. Of course, it's been particularly controversial. Last night, we saw 2 deputy chairmen of the Conservative Party resigning, saying that the legislation didn't go far enough so they could vote against it. It is one of the biggest challenges, some have said, to Rishi Sunak's leadership of the Conservative Party. And this is a crucial moment, of course. We're hearing this is the committee stage of the bill. Once it's finished here, it will go to the House of Lords. So this is the final result. But it is an important moment for the government because, of course, they need to bring as many of the MPs along with them as possible. It is important for them to achieve victories in an election year on votes like this. So stay with us here on BBC News as those amendments are voted on. And, of course, when that final vote happens later this evening, we'll bring you all of those results. So stay with us here on BBC News. This is BBC News. The headlines. UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak faces a crucial test on his plan to deport asylum seekers to Rwanda. An inquiry begins in Lincolnshire after a 2-year-old starves to death. Bronson Battersby is thought to have died alone after his father suffered a fatal heart attack. And Qatar sends medicine for hostages held in Gaza in a deal brokered with Israel and Hamas to see increased aid enter Gaza for civilians. Now, you can see on your screen at the moment, let's look at these live pictures of the House of Commons as a series of amendments are voted on. The most recent, a government majority of 471 in this latest amendment. It failed in the Commons. This was the former Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick, who wanted to toughen up the safety of Rwanda Bill to make sure that the court couldn't stop flights taking off. This is what happened when the first plane to Rwanda, you might remember, was due to leave back in 2022. It's under what's known as Rule 39. Critics call it a pajama injunction. So on your screen there, continuing live pictures of the House of Commons and all of the details there as those amendments continue to be voted on ahead of the main vote on the bill, which will happen in the next couple of hours and which you'll see, of course, here on BBC News. Now, an inquiry is underway in Lincolnshire in northern England into how a 2-year-old child died of starvation after his father, who was caring for him alone, suffered a fatal heart attack. Bronson Battersby was found in the home of his father, Kenneth, who was 60. It's thought he died in the days after Christmas, and the child was then left alone. There were attempts to check on Bronson's welfare, but by the time the property was entered, it was too late. Joe Black has this report from Skegness, and I should warn you that some of the details are distressing. It's Leone Perry talking about his father, Haim, who's still being held hostage in Gaza. Around the world and across the UK, this is BBC News.
BBC News, bringing you different stories from across the UK. For more stories from across the UK, head to the BBC News website.
You're live with BBC News. Now, rappers like to shock, and Northern Ireland's latest success follows that trend. The rap trio from Belfast, who perform mainly in Irish, have sold out gigs in the UK, Ireland and the US. And now Kneecap are making their acting debut as well. Their film is having its premiere at the Sundance Film Festival in the US. Our culture correspondent Charlotte Gallagher has been to Belfast to meet them. And just to warn you, her report does contain some flash photography. You're watching BBC News. A new BBC documentary is revealing the extent of the lies spread by a 22-year-old woman who falsely told police in Cumbria that she'd been raped by men who were part of an Asian grooming gang. She was jailed last year, but Anna Collinson has been investigating the web of deceit that she created. You may find some of the details in her report upsetting. Stay with us. Here's the weather.
Hello there. The Met Office amber snow and ice warnings remains in force